In a way, this album started like right here.
Just behind that glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very strange actually walking back in here. We haven't hung out here much since that day, and we were in that room there.
Yeah.
Because we were mixing Rushmere with Tom Elmhurst up the street. He used to have a room upstairs where we mixed Delta. But we still had to do a couple overdubs. So we got in this room to do a bit of drums, bit of BVs, whatever it was. And we were mixing effectively in that room.
Yeah.
And Aaron Dessner walked in because he was upstairs with Gracie. And that's what this building does. It brings people together in kind of magical ways.
It is what it does. And he had a track or something. Did he play it for you then?
He had a couple of ideas. I think he's got a lot of ideas. He's got like a war chest of things that he goes around, he gathers. He doesn't like to kind of rest. He's obviously been making some pretty seminal albums for the last few years, but in his in-between times and late at night, he's collecting thoughts and putting things down and collaborating with people. And he had a couple of things that he had actually felt that when that moment happened, which was opportunistic, I guess, it would happen at some point and we would share. And he was like, I've just always felt like this would be cool for you guys. And so he played us the beginnings of the banjo song and the song Prizefighter. And both of those songs felt like they opened a portal into something that we had wanted for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, maybe even something that we had never quite been able to unlock by ourselves.
Right.
And it was an invitation. And then we were like, all right, we're in.
Yeah.
And then like, it was like a surge of energy in the room. And I think Aaron felt it. And before we knew it, we were kind of planning, when are we going to do this again? What's tomorrow hold?
You say it opened a portal into something you wanted. What was it you wanted?
Since we started the band, I feel like we've been kind of scratching at certain things, like musically, that, you know, it's just been hard to articulate. And it's kind of the beauty of doing this, is that we're just never fully realized, like actualized. Like this is like a kind of a constant effort to try and search for something. And a bit like truffle hunting or something, I don't know, like you're kind of like foraging for things, searching. And I think we heard something that was kind of, had eluded us in some ways, and it also felt incredibly familiar and like being home. So that's it. It's not just like the fact that it felt
So it was old and new at once.
Exactly.
Marcus Dravs did it with us on the first album, where he said, look, I've listened to the demos. He was actually in the gym, and he was listening to Roll Away Your Stone, I think, and was like, I actually realized that this is kind of like dance music, even though it's all acoustic instruments. And I can see it sitting on the radio next to a Jay-Z song. And we all thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
And then Little Lion Man became a radio single
Yeah.
and did really well. And he was right, like much to our surprise.
Yeah.
And Aaron basically did the same thing on this record. So it's old and new at the same time. It's like recognizing tradition and honoring it, but also looking ahead. And he said very clearly, like, I think it's time for a really modern sounding Mumford Sons record, which to him, in his head, was language that we understood immediately, so it just made the collaboration easy. He wanted to hear an immediacy in the songwriting that he could then represent with recordings in a way that felt cohesive.
Right.
And we got really excited by that straight away.
What is immediacy in songwriting?
First thought, kind of best thought, not overthinking, being really direct, and as honest as you can be.
Yeah. That means you have to not second guess yourself.
It means, you have to trust your instincts.
Right.
And not overthink, which is something that I personally, and I think collectively as a band, we've done a bit of in the past.
Right.
You know? We have overthought things and sort of deconstructed them from a place where they started quite pure.
Right.
And sometimes that's just a confidence thing, and we've kind of got our confidence back on this record.
Yeah.
You know, I think our band's kind of been on the back foot for a while.
Right.
Creatively.
Why is that, do you think? Why was
Insecurity.
it? Yeah.
We got big really fast.
Yeah.
We outgrew ourselves a little bit, and we've been playing catch up a bit, I think, and making reactive records rather than proactive records. And this one felt like really proactive and like a real choice. We opted in.
Yeah.
And it was at the beginning of the Rushmere process, I think, that we sat down, the three of us, and got instruments in our hands and were like, yeah, let's renew our vows. We really want to do this, and here's why.
Yeah.
And it was songs. And Here was the first song that came from that session. And we couldn't finish it. in time for Rushmere. And then when we got with Aaron, he was like, oh, well, I think what you got to do is just this. And it's like 3 changes, slapped it down on record. We recorded that thing in like a day.
What was the phrase you used? And it slipped out of my head, but you said something, it was like bigger than yourselves or something like that.
We outgrew, I think.
You outgrew yourselves.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
What does that mean?
I mean, we climbed all the rungs on the ladder, certainly live. You know, we went from pubs to clubs to academies to theatres to arenas and then stadiums.
Yeah.
And headline festivals, obviously. But we didn't skip any of those steps.
Yeah.
But we did most of them just once.
Yeah.
And it happened really fast. And suddenly we're standing on stage at the Grammys winning Album of the Year. And like, it kind of went over our heads that whole period of time, honestly, because it was really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd been a band for 5 years by the time that happened.
Yeah.
And we've been a band now for 10 years since then.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, obviously, COVID offered a bit of an opportunity for a reset. And then when we got back in the room, the 3 of us, we looked each other in the eye and said, like, let's do this proactively, out of choice, not out of just like, you know, not being mechanical, but just because there's nothing else to do.
I think there's a lot of agency in this record and the decisions that we're making, but I think there's also a kind of a sense of responsibility that we have to the band, which in its way is kind of, it's obviously a representation of us, but it kind of does live in the world in its own thing.
Yeah.
You know, we have to turn up for it, and it kind of, especially when you think about the relationship that Mumford Sons has with its audience, it's like we have a direct relationship, but there's also kind of expectations around what that means. So I think it'd be interesting to see how we would answer that question in 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Do you know what was really refreshing and beautiful to me was that Aaron was the first producer we've worked with who's known us for a really long time. We've been friends for like 15 years.
Right.
And we worked together in various capacities. He helped us on our 3rd record. We did the Day of the Dead, you know, that record with him. And I did a bit of stuff on Taylor Swift's record with him, just singing with him. And we'd stayed in touch. We've been friends for a long time. And he was able to say to us, like, here's what I really want to hear from you guys. Mm-hmm. Like, a fan of the band with honest intent, creative intentions. And the reason he never rests is because he doesn't make it work. He does this stuff for fun. He just makes music with his mates, which is how we started. And it was so refreshing to come back to that and not be sort of put together with a producer, well, not put together, put ourselves in a room with a producer that we think is great and we admire their work, but doesn't know us and we don't know them. It's a blind date exercise a lot of the time. And I don't regret any of those decisions that we've made. But this one, at this moment for us, having Aaron as a friend really first, but also as a producer at the top of his game, I think one of the best in the game right now, being able to say to us like, look lads, strip it back, I want to hear this from you.
Yeah.
That was really motivating and inspiring.
When you're at an inflection point in something, as you guys were with this band, about making the decision again about whether you want to do this or not, right? I mean, it was your choice to go on. You didn't have to.
Yeah.
And maybe you considered you didn't want to, I don't know. What were you thinking at that point?
I think, you know, everything happens in the right order. I think it was sort of miraculous that we got to finish touring Delta.
Yeah.
That then Marcus made a solo record, and then, you know, COVID came along and made everything very weird and confusing for a bit. And then, you know, we got to have a moment to step away and actually have a bit of a bird's eye view on everything that had happened of the last, you know, however many years. And that allows an intentionality when you come back together. And there was never a conversation about not continuing. There was never any real certainty around continuing. It was like, it was just an assumption, I think just an implicit belief between us that like we love what we do and nothing's really changed. We love music, we love each other. So when we got back together for that first time, it wasn't so much about using our words, it was like using our hands with our instruments just to see what would happen. Yeah. And we really had a great time and we liked what happened. And so we carried on because it's fulfilling and we love it. So.
And what happened in that room was unique to this collection of humans. Right. And that's the alchemy of a band. Like we couldn't have made any of this music in a different formation. Right. You know? And we knew that it was like I remember the first rehearsals we had as a band, where we opened our mouths to sing together. It sounded different to anything I'd heard before, or any room I'd sung in before. And it was like, that's a band, actually.
Right.
We had our little internal Simon Cowell moment. We were like, I can sell this. But it happened again in that room in Los Angeles, like January 23. So actually, we weren't apart for very long. Everyone was apart for COVID.
Right.
And then it was an extra year, basically.
Right.
But we'd finished touring, spring of 2020.
Right.
We were like, March 8th, 2020 was our last show.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was late. It was in Florida. All the cruise ships were off the coast. It was apocalyptic. It was weird. And then we went home. Then we did COVID. I made a record, and then we got back together less than 3 years later, which is not a very long break for a band that's been a band for a long time. It's just normally we'd make a record in that time and tour it.
Yeah.
So we just skipped one record in the kind of cycle, the cyclical life of our band, which I think was so good for us. And then when we got back together, we were like, right. And we just wrote tons of songs.
Yeah.
So we put Rushmere out, and we weren't done, and we put Prizefighter out, and I think we're still not done, to be honest.
Were you concerned at all when Winston left and the band went from 4 to 3 that somehow the chemistry would change? Because it can.
Totally can, yeah. I don't think concerned, we're more curious.
Yeah.
And then when we got in the room, we started writing, like, Here, Where It Belongs, Malibu,
Yeah.
all came in that first 3 days.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, we're good.
The best way to answer that question for us was just to get in a room and make music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a conceptual version of that conversation on like an abstract fashion would be very unhelpful. So we were like, let's just meet up, let's play. We were sat in a garage in Marcus's place in LA at the time, and I think within like 3 hours we answered the question.
Yeah.
But there wasn't much conversation. It was more music.
Right. Well, you're right. I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you end up, it was at the Ryman that you performed again for the first time.
Yeah, it was on my solo tour.
Yeah.
And these lads flew out because they'd been unbelievably supportive of the whole project. And they flew out to the Ryman just to come to the show. And then when we were together, we couldn't help ourselves. We're like, well, let's just sing one.
Yeah.
And we did it just with an acoustic guitar and sang. And at that moment, I was like, yeah. You know, this is going to be great. And people were so sweet and excited. And what we should have done was broken up and done a reunion tour. Because that is, do you know what I mean? Like, take that and done it 5 times. It's wicked. Great
does
business
work.
plan.
It works every time. Yeah. You said that writing the solo album actually made your interest in the band even stronger. Your love of the band stronger.
Yeah, the band is home for me. And it's just so much fun. I think we've always encouraged each other to do things outside of the band creatively as well, because I think it makes you a better band member if this isn't your only outlet artistically. And some band members paint, or they do art shows, or they, like have a golf obsession that, like creates other areas in their lives for outlets, And I think we've always encouraged each other to do that and continue to. And all of us have collaborated outside the band a ton. At the end of the day, we're here to make music with our mates. But we know that there's an alchemy that comes together when the 3 of us sit down. And on this record, Aaron effectively joined our band from that first day behind that glass. Mm-hmm. He played us a couple ideas. I was instantaneously inspired. Started writing lyrics for Prizefighter, the first listen through. Mm-hmm. And it was a sketch that he'd written with Justin Vernon on one of their wild weekends together where they just write for fun. Yeah. And he showed it to us. And I straight away had ideas for a lyric. And that was the process for all of these songs. We're a band with Aaron, which is like the purest form of what a producer should do. It's what Glyn Johns did with the Beatles, and The Who as well. And where you have an objective voice who can also be part of a creative process, which is really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I want to get the timing on this right. You've talked about working with Pharrell and how that came about. I'm not sure when that exactly was.
No one is.
Okay.
It's okay, don't worry.
But it preceded Rushmere, did it? When you...
It's all kind of a jumble.
Is it? Yeah.
No, it didn't. We basically went to...
Started here,
the West Country.
No, it did start here. Oh my gosh.
Rushmere?
Well, no, the first
No, I'm going back.
All right.
I'm going back. Rushmere started in the West Country of England.
Right.
We did a couple weeks. June 23.
Was it? It must have been. Must have been.
It's
I think
just
it
a
was
wild
June.
jumble, isn't it?
Yeah,
have
I
been.
think it was June 23, and then we went to Nashville and carried on. And then by the end of Nashville, we felt like we weren't done writing songs. We wanted more songs. And so we came here and we did a few days with Pharrell in that room there and this room here.
Yeah.
And it was so fun that then when we went back and did a bit more Rushmere, we were like, well, let's just keep going, just write songs. Like,
Right.
songs fall from the sky by magic. You just got to run around the world trying to catch them. I remember saying to the lads, I reckon there's some more songs in Paris. So we went to Paris, and we did. We got more songs in Paris. And then we finished Rushmere. And then when finishing Rushmere is when Prizefighter started.
At some point, we put Good People out.
We should probably research this.
We should get to what happened.
I kind of
then-
like it as a blur.
It's very blurry.
You've said that Pharrell basically changed the way you thought about yourselves.
Yeah, he really did. We were in Paris finishing a song. I think it was Good People, and I was trying to finish a lyric. And he'd invited some people. They arrived with bottles of champagne, and they were very French, which is never a great sign. And they came in the room, and I lost my nerve.
Yeah.
And he was like, "What's up?" And I said, "I just feel a bit like insecure, He's like, "Why?" He said, "Well, they're very French, and I quite want to impress them." He was like, "You haven't got to impress anyone at this point." And he took me next door and gave me a pep talk, like a coach.
Yeah.
And he said some very nice things, which I'm too English to repeat, really. But and was like, "Look, man, basically you've got this.
Yeah.
It's time for you to grow up a little bit
Yeah.
and inhabit the person that we see you as a writer, as an artist, as a band member." And injected me with the confidence I needed, a bit of swag,
Yeah.
to then approach finishing Rushmere, starting Prizefighter with more of a front foot kind of attitude, and particularly lyrically, because what we were talking about at the time was writing lyrics. And these lads had very graciously sat me down and said, after the solo record, they'd said, "We think you're in good form as a lyricist. We'd like you to be in charge of the lyrics, and don't dilute the process. Just let's see what it's like if it's just you writing the lyrics." Which I think, again, goes to show the trust and the health of the band, because we can say to each other, like, "You're good at this for right now."
Yeah.
Like being in a sports team, like
Yeah.
you're on a streak, you start,
Yeah.
and lyrically that also came for me with a responsibility to go and work,
Yeah.
and surround myself in words and be that guy in the coffee shop with a book of poetry, against a lot of my English instincts, where art is a hobby, not a calling, and really sort of live into that identity as an artist.
Right.
And I don't think I would have lent into that quite as confidently without the pep talk from P.
Was there a reluctance to see yourself as an artist?
Yeah. I was in denial about that for a
Yeah.
long time, basically until kind of the solo record and then Rushmere.
Why was that, do you think?
I think partly it's cultural, like art, the way I was brought up, not because of family, more because of school.
Yeah.
Art was extracurricular,
Okay.
effectively. Like if you did art A-level, which is like the exams you take at the end of high school. If you did art A-level, like you're a bit of a, cop-out, because you weren't doing ancient Greek or history or something, or chemistry or something proper.
Yeah.
And art was seen, and music as well, was seen as extracurricular,
Yeah.
and therefore a hobby and not a vocation.
Interesting.
So I don't know. I think I just was like resistant to the idea, and it was Arrested Development, I imagine, as well, like resistant to the idea that this is not just my job, but this is who I am.
Right.
I am an artist. And I read that book, The Artist's Way by Jane Cameron, which I know lots of writers that's really helped. And it wasn't because I was blocked, it's just because I was blocking myself, I think, and not allowing myself to just exist as an artist, which is like, in England, if you go around calling yourself an artist, you're a bit of a, Whereas I think leaning into that at this point in our lives, I'm not going to do anything else. I can't get a real job now.
It's interesting that someone like Aaron or even someone like Pharrell, they have an idea of who they think you guys are, right? Do you have the same idea, do you think?
I mean, the identity question is really a hard one to answer because, from our perspective, it's quite unique. You know, it's more of like a, you know, it's a friendship, and it's
Yes.
you know, there's a certain goal when we're writing together, and there's always a consensus when we've made something that you know that's good, and we all sort of believe in the same sort of output somehow.
Yeah.
But in terms of how other people see us, I think it's always been a bit confounding because we're always changing. You know, our intention really with each record is to reflect who we are in that moment, and invariably that's different from 3 years ago when we made the last record or whatever.
Sure.
So it's a moving thing that looks different from any angle that you could experience it or see it from.
Yeah.
So I think the conversation we have with a producer generally sits around ideas of like a little bit of process. You know, when we talked to Dave Cobb, it was about making something very elemental and like you've wandered into this live room and there's just a band playing that, and giving our audience that kind of experience. And as we said with Aaron, you know, there was something a bit more high fidelity focused and a bit more sort of intimate and direct about that goal. And beyond that, you just sort of have to wait for the songs to arrive.
Yeah, and I think great producers hold up a mirror to who you
Yeah.
are as well, which you might not be able to see as clearly at that moment. And that's, I think, particularly what Aaron did. And then like give you the confidence to actually tell the story that's at the top of your mind. Which is certainly what he did on this. Like again and again, I'd write something lyrically. We'd cobble something together musically. And then I'd write something lyrically and he was like, don't change it. That's it. Don't change it. Don't overthink it. So there's some really weird lyrics on this record, more imaginative lyrics. Because I think Aaron was showing us that he loved us for who we were.
Right.
And this is like a body confidence record or something, you know? Like there's other records where you like try on different clothes and that's really fun to do. And you're playing dress up a little bit here and there and you make sure you're within it. This one, we like took all our clothes off and stood in the mirror and we're like, all right, that's it then.
I'll do.
You know? And there was all sorts of lyrics on this record that would never have made it on other records
Like
that
what?
we've done in the past. Like I was a bank robber and then I was Superman.
Yes, I love that lyric.
Or I'm your queen and I'm your worst nightmare. Or like, you know, like the lyrics on Clover or Alley Cat.
Yeah.
You know, just lyrics I probably would have lost confidence in with time, being like, oh, I can't really say that.
Yeah.
And these guys, with their pep talk to me,
Yeah.
Pharrell with his pep talk, and then Aaron in the room being like, don't change it, man.
Yeah.
I think the thing of definition is a very interesting, like going back to your earlier question, because it can be quite stagnating. I think it can freeze you.
Suffocating almost.
Yeah, it can freeze you creatively. And so I think this question of whether Aaron or Pharrell or anyone outside of us can kind of have our number, have our, obviously everyone's entitled to their view of what we should do and how they see us.
Yeah.
But being too kind of locked in on that, and we have to, again, it's a little bit of a tussle because you completely being unaware is not possible, but also probably not helpful. But if you get too kind of committed to one view, I think that would be the beginning of the end. I think you said it really nicely last year. I think we were talking about this, and it was just this idea of being in the kind of continuing to stay in a bit of the kind of the wild creatively, like not kind of following the what would Mumford and Sons do in this situation, but like enabling just the unknown to creep in enough to keep it kind of interesting and challenging, so that we can still make, you know, mistakes or clangers. And in the studio, there has to be space where bad ideas can exist as well. And then trust. But like, hopefully we then finish a record and get it out into the world in a way that we're very proud of. But it can't be like, our job can't be wholly service of what Mumford & Sons has become.
Yeah, and it's like, you can't think like, what would the band do right now? It's like, what would we as artists, as this individual group of artists, what would we do right now? And then that's the band. And that defines the band. So this...
You can also get lost though, can't you? I mean,
yeah, so having a good plan and a time limit. And I found it really helpful because we floated around a bit. We started here, we followed Aaron to Paris, then Biarritz, and then the West Country of England, and then we ended up at Long Pond, up at his place upstate,
Yeah,
New York.
been there, yeah.
And it was the least self-aware record we've ever made, because really we camped out there for a couple of weeks, and there was nothing else to do. There were no distractions, and we were completely, honestly detached from the outside world as we know it, and our audience particularly, and critics and people online and comments. Like, we were just totally unplugged from all that. And honestly, I can say with this record, I did not think about how it would be received outside of the room. We were having such a good time, just the three of us and Aaron and Bella Blasco, one of the greatest engineers of all time in my view. That was it. And we were in this room making music together, and once we were happy, the record was done.
Yeah.
And we didn't think about what happened. And this is the first time, honestly, I haven't looked up a single thing about this record since it's come out, because I don't need to know.
Yeah.
And I don't need to read comments, I don't need to read reviews. You know, we'll see how people like it when we come to play the shows in the summer and onwards. But it's just right now, it just feels like it was made in a pretty purist form, an attitude that was like focused on being an artist and being creative.
It's funny with Aaron, I think that while sonically it feels, and creatively in so many ways, it feels like a very progressive record that we've just made with Prizefighter. For us, it feels really sort of exemplary of where we are creatively, and that's always a good sign, I think, for us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's an atmosphere, there's a continuity to it,
Yes.
which feels incredibly familiar, and I think that's because as a producer, he tapped into our naiveties and our like playfulness and all of the things that were so intact when we started as a band.
Yeah.
You know, so that sort of essence, which, you know, perhaps you can overthink and people can inject outside, you know, opinions, good and bad, whatever. It does start to unravel a bit, I think. So I think it's a job of a producer to identify that kernel of like, what is the thing that gets these guys so excited to play together and to write together and to be a band.
Yeah.
You know, Aaron, somehow, I sort of felt that off him as a superpower, you know. Very enabling, very...
Well, it's got to give you a lot of confidence in the studio, too.
Exactly, yeah.
Because, I mean, I know when I was listening to the album, I was like, okay, this is new, but this is recognizably a Mumford & Sons album.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
Kind
like,
of the most Mumford & Sons record we've made, I think.
Yeah, it's
It's worth surprising, you know, to me, but yeah.
yeah. Why is that, do you think?
Because of all that stuff we just talked about, I think confidence and being able to just be ourselves.
Yeah.
And feel like, you know, all we needed was someone like Aaron, an old friend, to be like, you're good, guys.
Yeah.
You know? That was all it took, really.
It's so funny. how-
Yeah, it's wild.
You know?
And I wish artistry wasn't that fragile, but sometimes it just is, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of the nature of the beast, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've also talked about Gracie Abrams playing a role in this, and I was like, wait, where did that come from?
Came from upstairs.
Yeah?
That's why this place is so magical. Yeah, Aaron and Gracie were upstairs, and they came down and said hi. And we've known Gracie for a very long time, you know, and followed her right from the beginning, partly also through Aaron, because of all their work together that they've done. And she, weirdly, she was at our show in Portland, Maine in like 2013, I think.
Wow.
And she had heard the demo idea that Aaron had written with John Bellion for the banjo song, and had texted me and said, "You've got to do something with that, because it's great, and I think you guys would kill it."
Yeah.
And so that afternoon, from behind that glass, I texted her the first draft of the lyrics, and actually it was an A/B question. It was like, should it be this or should it be this?
Yeah.
She was like, "You should go with this."
Yeah.
And then basically she became like a fairy godmother for the record. You know, we'd send her demos when they were done. And then, what do you think of this? Thumbs up. She was cheerleading.
Yeah.
And she like gave me, when we were coming to the mix, she gave me some pep talks about not changing it, about believing in it. She was very strong in her opinion. It's her favorite thing of ours that we'd ever done. And she has been a legitimate fan of the band for a long time. So that was really meaningful. I also think her sensibilities are really dialed, on point. And then we, you know, said to her, like, do you want to sing on anything? She was like, yeah, I want to sing on Badlands. So she went off with Aaron in London, and they did a day. And we thought she might sing some sort of like very distant backing vocals.
Yeah, yeah.
And turned it into the duet that I think it was always meant to be.
Yeah.
That song. And So it was organic and it was special.
Yeah.
We love her.
I'm really curious to hear these songs in a like a stadium.
Well, we started playing them last year. This is and it was like kind of from a point of confidence.
Yeah.
Because actually for the last few albums, we felt like, and I can't quite explain the kind of sequence of decisions, but like,
Yeah.
let's not reveal the music until the album's out.
Right.
But this was like, let's get this music into the hands of people as soon as possible. And so 4 or 5 of these songs we've been playing live, and we like it's a different journey that, because then you hear the recording of it and you've already heard us playing. We've been starting and finishing our shows for the last 6 to 9 months with songs from Prizefighter. So we've been trailing it. Actually, before we even announced it, we didn't really explain what those songs were. We just
Right.
started playing them.
Yeah.
But it's all been a bit of an effort to catch people up to where we are creatively.
Yeah.
And now these are going to be the biggest shows of our career, which is pretty fun. This, deep in, to feel like we're still climbing up. There's still places to explore, stages to stand on that we haven't
Yeah.
walked on yet. Fenway and Wrigley, especially, have been things that for a number of years have been places we've dreamt of walking.
Folsom and Boulder's gonna be fun.
Yeah. What were the ones you said? Sorry.
Folsom in Folsom Field and
Yeah.
Boulder
Yeah.
will be wicked, and Hyde Park in London again,
Yeah.
which we haven't done for 10 years. And
Yeah.
it's gonna be cool.